The morning sun was already blazing hot when Lisa packed her geology equipment into the back of her dusty pickup truck. She had been working as a water specialist for the state environmental agency for 3 years now, but this assignment felt different. The recent drought had everyone worried, and her job was to figure out why some underground springs were drying up while others kept flowing. Lisa had always loved working alone in the desert. There was something peaceful about the endless sky and the quiet that stretched for miles. Most people thought the desert was empty and boring, but she knew better. Under all that sand and rock was a hidden world of water moving through underground rivers that had been flowing for thousands of years. She drove her truck down a narrow dirt road that barely deserved to be called a road at all. The map on her dashboard showed she was headed to a spot near the old cattle ranches, where local farmers had reported strange changes in their water wells. Some wells that had never gone dry were suddenly empty, while others were producing more water than water. Ever before, after driving for 2 hours, Lisa finally reached the area she needed to study. She parked her truck under the only tree she could find and grabbed her heavy equipment bag. The metal tools were already burning hot from the sun, but she was used to that. She put on her wide hat and started walking toward what looked like solid ground near some green bushes. The GPS on her phone showed she was in exactly the right spot. According to her research, there should be an underground spring somewhere nearby. She could even see some green plants growing in a small area, which usually meant water was close to the surface. Lisa set up her first piece of equipment and started taking measurements. Everything seemed normal at first. The ground felt solid. Under her boots and her instruments were giving her the readings she expected. She moved a few steps closer to the green area to get a better sample of the soil. That's when everything went wrong. Her right foot suddenly sank into what she thought was solid ground. Before she could react, her left foot went down too. In just a few seconds, she was knee-deep in what felt like thick, wet sand that seemed to be pulling her down. Lisa had heard about quicksand before, but she always thought it was something that only happened in old movies. Now she was learning the terrifying truth. This wasn't the dramatic Hollywood version where people sink completely in seconds. This was the real thing, which was actually much worse, because it happened slowly and there was time to panic. She tried to pull her legs out, but every movement seemed to make her sink deeper. The sand wasn't like regular sand at all. It felt thick and heavy, like wet concrete that hadn't dried yet. The more she struggled, the more the quicksand seemed to grab onto her legs and pull her down. Within minutes, she was buried up to her waist. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She tried to stay calm and remember what she had learned in her safety training, but panic was starting to take over. Lisa reached for her cell phone, but when she looked at the screen, her heart sank even more. No signal. She was completely alone in the middle of nowhere, trapped in quicksand. With no way to call for help, she tried to reach for her equipment bag, thinking maybe she could use one of her tools to help pull herself out, but the bag was just out of reach, and stretching for it only made her sink deeper. She was now buried up to her chest, and the thick sand was making it hard to breathe. The sun was getting hotter, and Lisa was starting to feel dizzy. She had been stuck for almost an hour now, and she was getting tired from fighting against the quicksand. She knew that if she passed out, she might sink deep enough that no one would ever find her. That's when she started yelling for help, even though she knew the chances of anyone hearing her were very small. The nearest ranch house was probably miles away, and the road she had driven on didn't see much traffic, but Lisa kept yelling anyway. She shouted until her throat was sore, then rested for a few minutes, then shouted again. She tried to stay calm and save her energy, but it was hard not to panic when she could feel herself slowly sinking deeper. Meanwhile, about a mile away, Tom was riding his horse along the fence line of the ranch where he worked. He had been a cowboy for most of his adult life, and he knew this land better than anyone. He was checking for broken fence posts when he heard something strange carried on the desert wind. At first he thought it might be a coyote or some other animal, but as he listened more carefully, he realized it sounded like a human voice calling for help. Tom had excellent hearing from years of working outdoors. and he could tell the voice was coming from the direction of the old spring area. Without hesitation, Tom turned his horse toward the sound and rode as fast as the rocky ground would allow. He had lived in this desert long enough to know that when someone was calling for help out here, it was usually a matter of life and death. As he got closer, he could see a pickup truck parked under a tree, and he could hear the voice more clearly. Now, it was definitely a woman. She sounded like she was in serious trouble. When Tom finally spotted Lisa, his heart jumped. He had seen Quicksand before, and he knew exactly how dangerous it was. The woman was already buried up to her chest, and she looked exhausted from fighting against it. Tom quickly got off his horse and grabbed his rope. He had been using a lasso since he was a kid, and he knew it might be the only thing that could save her life. "Hold on," he shouted to Lisa. "Going to get you out of there, but you need to stop moving. The more you struggle, the deeper you'll go." Lisa had never been so happy to see another person in her entire life. She tried to follow his instructions and stay as still as possible. Even though every instinct in her body was telling her to keep fighting, Tom carefully moved around the edge of the quicksand, testing each step to make sure he didn't get trapped. He could see that Lisa was scared and tired, but he also noticed that she was trying to stay calm and follow his directions. That was good. Panicked people were much harder to rescue. He threw his rope toward her, but the first throw fell short. The second throw was closer, but Lisa couldn't reach it without moving too much. Tom could see that she was sinking a little deeper. He knew he was running out of time. On his third throw, the rope landed right next to Lisa's arm. She carefully grabbed it and wrapped it around her body under her arms, trying not to make any sudden movements that might make her sink faster. Tom tied the other end of the rope to his saddle and slowly backed his horse away from the quicksand. The rescue was slow and careful. Too much force might hurt Lisa or break the rope. Too little force wouldn't be enough to pull her out of the thick sand. It took almost 2 hours of patient work. But finally, Lisa felt herself being pulled free from the quicksand that had nearly become her grave. When she was finally on solid ground, she collapsed from exhaustion and relief. Tom quickly brought her water and made sure she was okay. Her legs were covered in thick, dark sand, and she was shaking from the experience, but she was alive. "You," Lisa whispered, still breathing hard. "I thought I was going to die out there." Tom just nodded and helped her sit up. In the desert, people looked out for each other. It was just the way things were done. But as he looked at this brave woman who had been working alone in such a dangerous place, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. This rescue was going to change both of their lives in ways neither of them could imagine. Tom helped Lisa to her feet, but she was still shaking from her terrifying experience. Her legs felt weak, and the thick quicksand was still clinging to her clothes like cement. She tried to walk back toward her truck, but after just a few steps, she stumbled and nearly fell. "Whoa there," Tom said, catching her arm. "You need to take it easy. That was a serious ordeal you just went through. Your body needs time to recover." Lisa wanted to argue that she was fine, but the truth was she felt dizzy and exhausted. The desert heat wasn't helping either. She had been trapped in that quicksand for hours, and the stress had taken more out of her than she realized.
"My truck
is right over there," she said, pointing to the tree where she had parked. "I can drive myself back to town." Tom looked at her with concern. He had seen people after traumatic experiences before, and he knew she wasn't in any condition to drive. Her hands were still trembling, and she looked pale despite the desert sun. "Look, I don't mean to be pushy," Tom said gently, "but you shouldn't be alone right now. My boss lives just a few miles from here. She's a retired nurse, and she'd never forgive me if I let someone drive off in your condition without getting checked out first." Lisa hesitated. She didn't know this man, even though he had just saved her life. But she also knew he was right. She felt weak and shaky, and the thought of driving on those rough desert roads didn't seem very appealing. "I don't want to be any trouble," she said. "No trouble at all," Tom replied. "Mrs. Patterson has been running this ranch for 30 years. She's helped plenty of people who've had accidents out here. It's just what neighbors do." 20 minutes later, Tom was helping Lisa up the front steps of a comfortable ranch house. The building was old but well maintained, with a wide porch and windows that looked out over the desert landscape. Before they could even knock, the front door opened. Mrs. Patterson was a woman in her 70s, with silver hair and kind eyes. She took one look at Lisa's condition and immediately went into caretaker mode. "Good heavens, what happened to you, dear?" she asked, ushering Lisa inside. "Quicksand," Tom explained. "Found her trapped out by the old spring? Took me 2 hours to get her out." Mrs. Patterson shook her head. "That area has been dangerous for as long as I can remember. Come on, honey, let's get you cleaned up and fed. You look like you've been through a war." The inside of the house was cool and welcoming, with comfortable furniture and family photos covering the walls. Mrs. Patterson led Lisa to a guest bedroom and brought her clean clothes and towels. "You take a hot shower and get that sand off you," she said. "I'll make some soup. Tom, you go get her truck and bring it up to the house. She's not driving anywhere today." While Lisa was in the shower, Tom drove her pickup truck back to the ranch house. Couldn't help but notice all the scientific equipment in the back. There were instruments he didn't recognize, soil sample containers, and several thick books about geology and water systems. When he came back inside, Mrs. Patterson was setting the table for 3 people. She had made a big pot of chicken soup and fresh bread, which filled the house with wonderful smells. Lisa came out of the guest room wearing some of Mrs. Patterson's old clothes. She looked much better now that she was clean and dry, but Tom could see she was still tired from her ordeal. "Feeling better?" he asked. "Much better, thank you," Lisa said. "I can't believe how kind you both are. I don't know how I can ever repay you." "Nonsense," Mrs. Patterson said, ladling soup into bowls. "We're just glad Tom found you in time. Now sit down and eat something. You need to get your strength back." As they ate, Lisa explained what she had been doing out in the desert. She told them about her job studying underground water systems and how she was trying to figure out why some wells were drying up while others were producing more water than usual. Tom listened with interest. He had always been curious about the land around the ranch, especially the way water seemed to flow in mysterious patterns underground. Some areas that looked completely dry had springs that never ran out, while other places that seemed like they should have water were bone dry. "I've always wondered about that," he said. "There's a spot about 5 miles north of here, where my cattle always go to drink. The water never stops flowing, even in the worst droughts. But just a half-mile away, we tried to dig a well and never found a drop." Lisa's eyes lit up. "Really? That's exactly the kind of thing I'm studying. The underground water systems out here are incredibly complex. Most people don't realize that water can travel for miles underground before it comes to the surface. You know," Tom said thoughtfully, "I've been working this land for 15 years. I've noticed patterns that might interest you. I know where every spring is located, which ones are seasonal and which ones are permanent. I know where the ground gets soft after rain and where it stays hard." Lisa leaned forward with excitement. "The kind of local knowledge is invaluable. I have all the scientific instruments, but I don't have the years of experience that you have. I can tell you what the water table looks like on paper, but you know how it actually behaves."
Oh.
Mrs. Patterson smiled as she watched the 2 young people talking. She could see they were both passionate about the same thing, even though they came from completely different backgrounds. "Tom used to study geology in college," she said. "Did he tell you that?" Lisa looked surprised. "Really? I wouldn't have guessed." Tom's face reddened slightly. "It was a long time ago. I had to drop out after my 2nd year when my dad got sick. Never finished my degree." "But you never lost your love for the subject," Mrs. Patterson added. "He's always reading books about rocks and water and soil. I think he knows more about this desert than most people with fancy degrees." Lisa could see that Tom was uncomfortable talking about his unfinished education, so she changed the subject. "Well, I'd love to hear more about those water sources you mentioned. I'm supposed to be out here for another 2 weeks collecting data. Maybe you could show me some of the places that aren't on my maps." Tom's face brightened. "I'd be happy to help. This desert can be dangerous if you don't know where you're going. There are more quicksand areas than just the one you found today." "That would be wonderful," Lisa said. "I have to admit, after today's experience, I'm not too eager to go exploring alone anymore." Mrs. Patterson refilled their soup bowls and brought out a homemade apple pie. "It's settled then. Lisa, you'll stay here tonight so we can make sure you're completely recovered. Tomorrow, Tom can start showing you around the safe areas." Lisa tried to protest that she didn't want to impose, but Mrs. Patterson wouldn't hear of it. "I insist. It's been too quiet around here anyway. It'll be nice to have some company." That evening, the three of them sat on the front porch, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of orange and red. Lisa told them more about her work and her love for the outdoors. Tom shared stories about life on the ranch and the animals he worked with every day. As the stars began to appear in the clear desert sky, Lisa realized she felt more relaxed than she had in months. Her job usually kept her moving from place to place, staying in hotels and working alone. It had been a long time since she had experienced this kind of simple hospitality. "You know," she said, "when I woke up this morning, I thought today was going to be just another day of collecting soil samples. I never imagined I'd nearly die in quicksand and then end up having the most interesting conversation I've had in years." Tom smiled. "Life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it?" Mrs. Patterson looked at both of them and nodded knowingly. She had seen enough of life to recognize when two people were meant to meet, even if they didn't realize it yet themselves. That night, as Lisa lay in the comfortable guest bed, she thought about the day's events. She had started the morning as a woman focused entirely on her work. But now she found herself curious about the quiet cowboy who had saved her life and seemed to understand the desert, as well as she understood the science behind it. Neither of them knew it yet, but this was just the beginning of a connection that would change everything. Over the next few weeks, Lisa found herself looking forward to each morning more than she had in years. Tom would arrive at the ranch house just after sunrise, to cups of coffee in hand, ready to guide her to another hidden corner of the desert that wasn't marked on any of her official maps. Their working relationship had developed into something special. Tom knew the land like most people knew their own backyard, while Lisa could explain the scientific reasons behind everything they observed. Together, they made discoveries that neither could have made alone.
Ow.
"Look at this," Lisa said one morning, kneeling beside a small pool of clear water that seemed to appear from nowhere in the middle of dry rock. "According to my instruments, the spring is connected to an underground river that starts almost 50 miles north of here." Down beside her, close enough that she could smell the soap he used and feel the warmth radiating from his sun-bronzed skin. "My grandfather used to bring me here when I was a kid," he said softly. "He told me this water had been flowing here since before his grandfather was born. I never knew it traveled so far underground." These moments were becoming more frequent. A shared look when they discovered something interesting. A helping hand when the terrain got rough. Conversations that started about geology but somehow drifted to their dreams, their fears, their past disappointments. Lisa learned that Tom had grown up on a small farm with his father and younger sister. When his dad got cancer, Tom had dropped everything to take care of the family. He had worked 3 jobs to pay for medical bills and keep his sister in school. Even after his father passed away, Tom never went back to college because the debt was too overwhelming. "Do you ever regret it?" Lisa asked. One evening, as they sat by a campfire watching the stars appear in the desert sky. "Giving up your studies?" Tom was quiet for a long moment, poking at the fire with a stick. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I couldn't live with myself if I hadn't tried to save him. Family comes first, you know." Lisa understood. She had made her own sacrifices over the years, choosing her career over relationships, moving from place to place without putting down roots. But sitting here with Tom, she was starting to wonder if maybe she had been missing something important.
What?
"About you?" Tom asked. "Ever think about settling down somewhere instead of traveling all the time?" Lisa felt her heart skip a beat. Was he asking what she thought he was asking? "I used to think I needed to keep moving to be happy," she said carefully. "But lately, I've been wondering if maybe happiness isn't about the place you're in, but the people you're with." Their eyes met across the flickering flames, and Lisa felt something shift between them. This wasn't just friendship anymore. This was something deeper, something that scared and excited her at the same time. The next morning, Tom didn't bring 2 cups of coffee. He brought 1 cup and a thermos, which he poured into 2 matching mugs. It was a small gesture, but it felt significant somehow. They were becoming a team instead of just 2 people working together. "I have something to show you today," Tom said as they loaded their equipment into his truck. "It's a place I've never taken anyone before." They drove for almost an hour into a part of the desert that Lisa had never seen. The landscape here was different, more rugged, with red rock formations that looked like ancient castles rising from the sand. Tom parked the truck at the base of a small canyon and led Lisa up a winding path between the rocks. The climb was steep, but Tom helped her over the difficult spots. His strong hands gentle but sure. When they reached the top, Lisa gasped. Spread out below them was a hidden valley with a small lake fed by several natural springs. Green grass grew around the water's edge and wildflowers bloomed in colors she had never seen in the desert before. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "How did you find this place?" "I was tracking a lost calf about 5 years ago," Tom said. "Followed her up here and found this. Come here sometimes when I need to think." They spent the day exploring the hidden valley, and Lisa's instruments confirmed what Tom had suspected. This was the source of several underground rivers that fed springs all across the region. It was the kind of discovery that could change how water was managed for hundreds of miles around. But as they sat beside the lake eating the lunch Mrs. Patterson had packed for them, Lisa found herself thinking less about the scientific importance of their discovery and more about the man sitting beside her. "Tom," she said suddenly, "why did you bring me here?" He was quiet for a moment, skipping stones across the clear water. "Because I trust you," he said finally, "and because I wanted to share something special with someone who would understand how precious it is." Lisa felt tears spring to her eyes. She had spent years studying beautiful places all over the country, but no one had ever shared anything this personal with her before. "Thank you," she said softly, "for trusting me, for showing me this place, for saving my life that first day." Tom turned to look at her, and Lisa saw something in his eyes that made her heart race. "Lisa," he said quietly, "I think I'm falling." "In love with you?" The words hung in the air between them for a moment that felt like forever. Lisa knew she should be careful, should think about her job and her plans and all the reasons why this was complicated. But sitting in this magical place with this incredible man, all of those worries seemed very far away. "I think I'm falling." "In love with you too?" she whispered. When Tom kissed her, it felt like coming home after years of wandering. It was gentle and sweet and filled with all the feelings they had been building up over the past few weeks. As summer turned to autumn, their relationship deepened. Lisa extended her research assignment twice, then 3 times, finding new reasons to stay in the area. She started keeping some of her clothes at Mrs. Patterson's house, and Tom began planning his ranch work around her schedule. They were perfect together. Tom's practical knowledge combined with Lisa's scientific training led to discoveries that impressed even her supervisors in the state capitol. More importantly, they brought out the best in each other. Tom became more confident about sharing his ideas, while Lisa learned to slow down and appreciate the simple pleasures of ranch life. Mrs. Patterson watched their romance bloom with the satisfaction of someone who had seen it coming from the very beginning. She made sure they had plenty of opportunities to work together, packed them extra food for their field trips, and always seemed to find reasons to leave them alone in the evenings. "You know," she told Lisa one night as they washed dishes together, "I haven't seen Tom this happy since before his father got sick." "You're good for him," Lisa blushed. "He's good for me too. I never thought I could be happy staying in one place, but now I can't imagine leaving." "Then don't leave," Mrs. Patterson said simply. "Life's too short to let love slip away." But even as Lisa began to imagine a future with Tom, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Sometimes she caught him looking worried about something he wouldn't discuss. Occasionally he would get nervous when they saw other people in town, as if he was afraid of being recognized. Lisa told herself she was imagining things. Tom was just a private person who had lived a quiet life on the ranch. It was natural that he might feel uncomfortable with attention from outsiders. One evening in late October, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Lisa decided to bring up something that had been on her mind. "Tom," she said carefully, "I've been thinking about applying for a permanent transfer to this region. There's enough work here to keep me busy for years, and I love what we've been discovering together." Tom's face lit up with joy, but Lisa also saw something else flash in his eyes. Something that looked like fear. "That would be amazing," he said, pulling her close. I can't imagine this place without you anymore." But as he held her, Lisa felt him tense up slightly, as if her words had reminded him of something unpleasant. She wanted to ask him about it, but the moment felt too perfect to spoil with difficult questions. Neither of them knew that. Lisa's decision to stay would soon force them to confront a secret that could destroy everything they had built together. The love they had found in this beautiful, isolated place was about to be tested in ways they never could have imagined. Lisa sat at her laptop in Mrs. Patterson's kitchen, filling out the paperwork for her permanent transfer request. She had been putting it off for weeks, but today felt like the right day. Tom was out checking fences and the house was quiet except for the gentle ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. The application required a detailed background check on anyone she worked closely with in the field. It was standard procedure for government employees, but Lisa had never really thought about it before. She typed in Tom's full name, the same name he had told her when they first met. When the search results came back, Lisa's heart stopped. The first result was a wanted poster from the FBI website. The photo was 3 years old, but there was no mistaking Tom's face. The charges listed made her stomach turn: cattle theft, assault with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to commit fraud. Lisa stared at the screen, her hands trembling. This had to be some kind of mistake. The Tom she knew would never hurt anyone. He was gentle with animals, patient with her when she asked a million questions, and kind to Mrs. Patterson. He couldn't possibly be the criminal described in this report. But as she read further, the details became impossible to ignore. The location was right. The timeline matched when Tom had told her he started working at the ranch. Even his physical description was exact. Lisa's mind raced. Had she been living with a dangerous criminal for months? Had Mrs. Patterson been harboring a fugitive without knowing it? Was she in danger right now? She heard Tom's truck pulling up outside and quickly closed her laptop. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he would hear it when he walked in. "Hey," Tom said, coming through the kitchen door with his usual smile. "How's the paperwork going?" Lisa looked at his face, the same face she had kissed just that morning, and tried to see the criminal from the wanted poster. But all she saw was the man who had saved her life, who had shown her the most beautiful places in the desert, who had made her laugh every single day for the past 3 months. "Fine," she managed to say. Almost finished. I'd have noticed something in her voice because he sat down across from her at the table. "You okay? You look upset about something." Lisa wanted to ask him directly, but fear held her back. What if the charges were true? What if confronting him put her in danger? She needed time to think, to figure out what to do. She was tired. She said, "I think I'll go lie down for a while." That night, Lisa couldn't sleep. She lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what she had discovered. Every logical part of her brain said she should call the authorities immediately. She was a government employee. She had a duty to report criminals, but her heart told a different story. The Tom she knew was not capable of the crimes described in that report.
Ow!
There had to be more to the story. There had to be an explanation. Over the next few days, Lisa found herself watching Tom carefully, looking for signs that he might be dangerous or dishonest. But everything she observed only convinced her more that the charges couldn't be true. She watched him spend an hour trying to free a baby bird that had gotten tangled in some wire. She saw him give his own lunch to Mrs. Patterson's dog when the old animal seemed hungry. She noticed how he always made sure she was safe when they were working in remote areas, even when it meant extra work for him. Finally, Lisa couldn't stand the uncertainty anymore. She decided to do some research of her own before making any decisions about what to do with the information. Late one night, while Tom and Mrs. Patterson were asleep, Lisa used her government access to search for more details about Tom's case. What she found made her even more confused. The man who had accused Tom was a wealthy rancher named Bill Henderson, who owned property next to where Tom used to work. Henderson had a history of legal disputes with his neighbors, and several people had filed complaints against him over the years. Lisa dug deeper into court records and newspaper archives. She found a pattern. Henderson had accused at least 4 other people of various crimes over the past decade. In each case, the accusations had helped Henderson acquire land or water rights that he wanted. But in Tom's case, something had gone wrong. The other ranch owner, where Tom worked, had died unexpectedly of a heart attack right before the trial was supposed to begin, without his testimony. Tom's lawyer had advised him that he couldn't win against Henderson's wealth and connections. Lisa found one newspaper article that quoted Tom's former employer's widow. "Tom was like family to us," the woman had said. "Hey, he would never steal anything. He was the most honest man my husband ever hired. We believe Henderson made up these charges because he wanted our water rights." As Lisa read through more documents, a clearer picture began to emerge. Henderson had wanted to buy the ranch where Tom worked, but the owners wouldn't sell. So Henderson had apparently decided to destroy the ranch's reputation and drive away their best workers. The assault charge came from an incident where Tom had supposedly threatened Henderson with a rifle. But according to Tom's version of events, he had been carrying an unloaded hunting rifle when Henderson had cornered him on public land and started making threats. Tom claimed he had never pointed the weapon at anyone. Lisa realized that Tom probably ran away not because he was guilty, but because he knew he couldn't get a fair trial. A poor ranch hand going up against a wealthy landowner with political connections wouldn't stand much of a chance, especially in a small town where Henderson had influence. But understanding Tom's situation only made Lisa's dilemma worse. Even if she believed he was innocent, he was still technically a fugitive from justice. As a government employee, he was legally required to report his location to federal authorities. Yet how could she betray the man she loved? How could she destroy the happiness they had found together? How could she risk sending an innocent man to prison? Lisa spent sleepless nights wrestling with the decision. She thought about quitting her job so she wouldn't have the legal obligation to report Tom. She considered confronting him directly and asking him to tell her his side of the story. She even thought about running away with him to somewhere they could start over. But every option seemed to lead to more problems. If she quit her job without explanation, it would raise suspicions. If she confronted Tom, he might panic and disappear. If they ran away together, they would both be fugitives. The situation became even more complicated when Lisa's supervisor called to ask about the delay in her transfer paperwork. "We need those background checks completed by the end of the week," he told her. "The department is eager to approve your permanent assignment, but we can't do anything until all the security clearances are processed." Lisa knew she was running out of time. Soon someone else would run the same background check. She had run, and Tom's secret would be discovered anyway. She made a decision that terrified her. She would help Tom, but not by hiding the truth. Instead, she would use her resources and contacts to prove his innocence. It was risky and probably illegal, but it was the only way she could save both Tom and her own conscience. Lisa began working in secret, using her government access to gather evidence that might exonerate Tom. She collected documents about Henderson's other legal disputes, found inconsistencies in the original police reports, and even tracked down witnesses who might be willing to testify on Tom's behalf. But as she worked, Lisa realized that clearing Tom's name might take months or even years. In the meantime, she would have to lie to her supervisors, hide evidence from federal investigators, and live with the constant fear of being discovered. She was risking her career, her freedom, and her future for a man who didn't even know she had discovered his secret. But as Lisa looked at Tom sleeping peacefully beside her, she knew she couldn't make any other choice. Love had made her decision for her, even if it meant breaking the law to protect the man who had already saved her life once before.